Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into the classic theories of Adventure Time, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. Tonight, we're starting with someone you know well. The boy with the bear hat. The hero of Ooo, Finn the human. But what if he's more than just a hero? What if Finn wasn't just born into this strange world, but placed there by fate or magic or something even deeper to end a cycle that's been spinning for thousands of years? Let's drift into this quietly unsettling theory that Finn the human might be the universe's last, gentle attempt to stop the cycle of war that has plagued the Land of Ooo for eons. You see, long before Finn ever picked up a sword or shouted a battle cry, the world of Ooo was shaped by destruction. A burning ski, a mushroom cloud, the aftermath of the Great Mushroom War. It was a catastrophe that shattered the human world, twisted nature, and gave rise to a magical, mutated landscape. The scars of that war echo in everything. In the Ice King's crown, in the Candy Kingdom's artificial peace, and in the very soil beneath Finn's feet. War created Ooo, and war kept shaping it. But here's the thing. Finn is the only known full-blooded human in the series for a long time, at least. He's not part candy, not undead, not magical. Just human. Soft, breakable, and pure-hearted. And maybe that's exactly why he matters. Because unlike the other creatures of Ooo who evolved from the war, mutated by its consequences, Finn came into the story untouched by that original chaos, a clean slate. And yet, he's constantly being pulled toward conflict. Monsters to slay, kingdoms to save, prophecies, curses. Finn is always at the center of some battle. But over time, something strange starts to happen. He changes. At first, Finn wants to fight. He loves being the hero, sword-swinging, justice-dealing, the whole heroic package. But as the seasons go on, the violence wears on him. He loses his arm, he loses friends, his heroes let him down. He meets his father, a selfish space criminal. He finds other humans, and they've isolated themselves in fear. Again and again, Finn is shown what happens when people let fear and conflict rule them. And each time he responds, not with vengeance, but with understanding. Think about that. In a world where war birthed magic, monsters, and madness, Finn begins choosing peace. He starts asking questions. Instead of slaying monsters, he talks to them. Instead of clashing with Flame Princess, he respects her boundaries. Instead of hunting down his father, he lets go. These aren't just personal growth moments, they feel symbolic. As if Finn's journey is trying to teach the entire world of Ooo something it's forgotten. That the cycle of violence can be broken, not with a bigger sword, but with empathy. Let's pause there for a moment. Breathe in and out. Now, imagine the universe of Adventure Time as a massive, turning wheel, spinning from war to rebirth, from chaos to order and back again. What if Finn was placed in the timeline not to continue that spin, but to stop it? What if he's not the next hero, but the last? Some fans believe that Finn is the universe's final attempt to fix its mistakes, that his kindness is a form of cosmic correction. Because when you look closely, the Land of Ooo is full of beings shaped by trauma. Marceline's centuries of loss. Bubblegum's control issues. Ice King's broken identity. Even Jake's easygoing vibe hides the uncertainty of his origins. But Finn is different. He doesn't hold on to pain. He moves through it, learns from it, and more importantly, he helps others heal too. It's as if the world of Ooo is full of open wounds, and Finn is the quiet balm trying to soothe them. In one episode, he meets the legendary grass sword. It bonds with him, almost like destiny. But later he willingly lets it go, choosing his own path instead of one chosen for him. Isn't that powerful? Finn is offered power again and again, but only when he walks away from it does he truly grow, like the universe is testing him. Will you fight? Will you destroy? Will you become like the others? And time after time, Finn says no. But there's something even more mysterious. Why is Finn the only human in Ooo for so long? It's a question that lingers in the background of the show like a quiet echo. An entire species vanished. And here's this one boy, this brave, awkward, deeply feeling boy, growing up among candy people, talking dogs and ancient beings, never really knowing who or what he comes from. It would have been so easy for him to grow bitter, to harden. But instead he grows hopeful. And when he finally does find the last surviving humans, in that distant sealed colony floating above the earth, the reunion is not the joyful homecoming you might expect. These people, preserved in isolation, are afraid, cautious. They've been hiding for generations, safe from Oo's chaos, but also from life itself. And it's Finn who challenges that. He doesn't tell them to fight. He doesn't ask them to take sides. He just lives, wildly, messily, and bravely, proving that being human isn't about surviving. It's about connecting. He becomes a bridge, not just between the past and the future, but between fear and possibility. Because in a way, Finn carries the last memory of what it meant to be human, and the first glimpse of what humanity could be next. Now let's step back and look at a strange pattern in Finn's journey. Every time he gains power, it seems to come with a cost. The grass sword, the Finn sword, the arm he loses and the one he gains. Each time he levels up, it's followed by confusion, grief, or loss. But there's always a turning point where he gives something up, where he chooses simplicity over supremacy, emotion over ego. This constant return to humanness, raw, real, and unarmored, feels like more than just storytelling. It feels intentional, as if the universe of Ooo keeps asking him, "Are you sure you still want to be the hero?" And he keeps answering, "I want to be me." One of the most striking moments comes when Finn battles his own alternate self, Farm World Finn. That version of him did give in to power. He embraced the ice crown, let it consume him. And the world he shaped, it's cold, hollow, haunted. It's a vision of what Finn could have become if he'd chosen control over compassion. But he didn't. He pulled back. He remembered who he was. Not a weapon, not a symbol, just a boy who wants to do good. And maybe that's exactly the kind of human the world needed to see. Not a conqueror, not a savior, but someone who could make peace with the pain of existence and still keep loving. The deeper we go, the more it seems like Finn is less a product of the world and more a counterweight to it. While everything in Ooo is shaped by extremes, magic, mutation, madness, Finn is this steady center. He doesn't try to rewrite the world. He simply shows up in it, day after day, with heart and hope. Maybe that's why others change when they meet him. Ice King, in all his brokenness, finds flickers of Simon around Finn. Marceline, long buried in grief, opens up an eagle. Even Bubblegum, so often cold and calculated, softens in Finn's presence. He doesn't force anyone to become better. He just makes it easier for them to try. Now think about this. If the Mushroom War was a mistake born from human fear and ambition, then Finn is the universe's way of whispering, "Let's try again." And this time, instead of bombs, the response is a boy. Instead of conquest, the answer is kindness. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The world was once ended by humans, and now maybe it's being healed by the last one. In one episode, Finn has a dream where he merges with a giant, ancient version of himself, a being made of branches and stars. He looks out over time, over lifetimes, and sees that everything he's done echoes. It's a quiet revelation. That the little choices matter. That every small act of compassion adds up. That maybe the cycle of war isn't broken by one grand act of heroism, but by thousands of tiny decisions to be good. That's what makes Finn extraordinary. Not his sword skills, not his quests, but his willingness to stay soft in a world built by violence. So, what if that was always the point? What if the universe needed a different kind of warrior? Not one who wins battles, but one who ends them. There's a quiet theory whispered by fans that Finn isn't just the last human for now, but the first in a rebirth of humanity. Think about it. The last ember from a fire long burned out, glowing just enough to start something new. It's not a mistake that so many beings are drawn to him. From magical creatures to ancient kings, cursed villains, to cosmic entities, everyone feels something around Finn. Because in a world of echoes and remnants, he's something rare. A soul not shaped by the trauma of the Great War, but by curiosity, love, and resilience. He didn't grow up with the weight of the old world. He grew beyond it. And maybe that's why the world around him bends toward change. The Ice King begins to remember Simon, not because of spells, but because of friendship. Huntress Wizard, so distant and wild, opens herself to affection. Even Fern, who embodies Finn's darker instincts, ultimately seeks peace. In a way, every version of Finn, every alternate self, reflection, or rival, represents a path not taken. And he meets them all, not with fear, but with compassion. There's something quietly profound about that. That instead of defeating his shadows, he embraces them. Instead of silencing others, he listens. Finn shows that peace isn't on a destination, it's a series of choices. One moment after another, day after day, breath after breath. Not flashy, not heroic in the traditional sense, but deeply, deeply human. And here's where things get really fascinating. The show never tells us what happens after Finn's final adventure. He sails away. The land changes. Time marches on. But in the distant future, in that lush, strange world of Adventure Time, distant lands, we see new people, new creatures, new humans. And while Finn himself is long gone, something of him remains. Not just in statues or relics, but in the very spirit of the world. There's laughter, weirdness, friendship. There's a softness in this future that feels like a memory of him. It's as if Finn planted something invisible in the soil of time. Not a legacy of conquest, but one of connection. He didn't leave behind monuments. He left behind a better tone, a gentler frequency for the world to hum along to. And what makes that theory even more magical is that it mirrors us. Because watching Finn, night after night, through the chaos and wonder of Ooo, we're reminded that softness isn't weakness. That a single kind person, wandering, unsure, and hopeful, can shift everything. It's a comforting idea to drift off to. that maybe the quiet, thoughtful acts we do each day ripple farther than we'll ever see. There's a scene where Finn looks out over a battlefield, not with triumph, but with sadness. And he says something simple. I don't think fighting solves anything anymore. That line, it cuts through the fantasy, the magic, and the monsters. Because it's a line that could belong to any world, even ours. It's a line of maturity, of choosing growth over glory. And for a show built on sword fights and quests, that moment is radical. It's saying, maybe the real hero's journey is learning when not to fight. There's another layer to all of this, a spiritual one. Some fans believe Finn is a kind of cosmic reset. Like the universe of Ooo needed to watch a human learn empathy all over again. To see if this time it could go differently. And not by chance, but by intention. That in a world burned by war, poisoned by ambition, and reshaped by strange forces, a boy raised by love could show the way back, not by rewriting history, but by choosing a better now. In that sense, every sword he drops, every time he says, I forgive you, every moment he stops to listen, he's healing something older than himself. He's tending to wounds left behind by generations. Maybe that's why he had to be the last, so he could carry the weight and gently lay it down. There's a theory whispered like a lullaby in quiet corners of the fandom, that Finn was never meant to save the world in the traditional sense. Not with power, not with armies, not even with magic. He was meant to remind it how to feel again, to feel deeply, to care, to hope in spite of everything. Because hope, after all, is a radical thing in a post-apocalyptic land. You see it in how people respond to him. Even the strangest creatures, sentient candy, ancient monsters, forgotten deities, they don't just fear Finn, they trust him. That's rare. And trust is earned quietly, in tiny moments, in long walks, in difficult conversations, in choosing again and again to be kind when it would be easier not to be. That's how Finn lived. And that's how he left behind something stronger than any magical artifact. He left behind trust. Let's not forget, Ooo is a land built on ruin. The Mushroom War didn't just destroy cities, it shattered the emotional memory of humanity. What came after was beautiful, yes, but strange, unstable, lonely. And then along came this gangly, goofy kid who loved deeply, fought fairly, and forgave quickly. He didn't try to control the world, he belonged to it. That might be why so many creatures follow him, even when he's unsure of himself. They're not following a leader. They're following a light that says, you're allowed to change. You're allowed to grow. You're allowed to make mistakes and still be worthy of love. That's the heart of this theory. Finn wasn't the last human because of survival. He was the first of a new kind of human, not hardened by the past, but softened by it. Not erasing the scars, but learning to live with them gently. Think about his dreams, his visions, the moments when the show lets us peer inside his heart. They're not full of conquest. They're full of connection, of long-lost family, of shared laughter, of simple joy. Even his deepest regrets are rooted in empathy. He doesn't wish he was stronger. He wishes he was more understanding. That's powerful. That's rare. And in a strange way, it's prophetic. Because here's the secret tucked into this segment's quiet folds. Finn was never just a character. He was a mirror. A soft place for the show's weird, chaotic universe to finally see itself. And maybe that's why, in the far-off future, when Ooo has morphed into something else entirely, we still feel him. In the way the grass moves. In the way strangers become friends. In the way every small act of kindness shapes something bigger. It's easy to think of heroes as warriors. But the most enduring ones are gardeners. Tending to a world that's been wounded. Watering it with patience. Weeding out anger. Letting the wildflowers of compassion grow. Finn the human was never meant to be a conqueror. He was a cultivator of peace. So tonight, as you sink deeper into sleep, let this idea settle softly in your chest. That in a world spinning too fast, your gentleness is a quiet kind of power. Your kindness is a kind of magic. And just like Finn, you don't need to save the world. You just need to care for it. One small moment at a time. You're still here, floating through the thoughts of Ooo with us. Eyes heavy, mind open, heart steady. That's beautiful. Let's turn our attention now to something darker. But don't worry, we'll take it slow. You know the Lich. That skeletal whispering thing that oozes decay with every word. The one who doesn't just want to hurt things, but to erase everything. He's the kind of presence that makes shadows stretch longer and colder. The kind that doesn't rage like a villain. He waits like a storm. But here's the question that changes everything. What if the Lich isn't evil at all? What if he's just doing what he was made to do? Now that might sound wild at first, but look closely at the Lich. He never monologues about revenge. He doesn't cry out for power. He doesn't gloat when he wins. He simply says, "I'll fall." Cease. The end comes. There's no flair, no ego, no joy in destruction. Just inevitability. Like gravity. Like time. Like the final leaf falling in autumn. So what if the Lich is less of a character and more of a force? A natural phenomena, wearing bones like a winter wind wears snow. There's a theory, a quietly haunting one, that the Lich isn't evil, because evil implies choice, and the Lich doesn't choose. He's the opposite of life, the end of stories, the final quiet. He isn't here to conquer Ooo. He's here to return it to nothing, to silence, to stillness. That makes his presence feel less like a threat, and more like an ancient law, one that was written before the stars, a balance to joy, a response to love. And if that's true, then Finn's fight with the Lich was never good versus evil. It was life versus entropy, a boy made of wonder, standing in the face of universal silence. You might remember the first time we meet the Lich, that haunting deer costume, the slow reveal. And then, his true form. There's no fiery entrance, no dramatic scream. Just stillness. He doesn't need theatrics, because the Lich doesn't argue with existence. He simply ends it. But what if, this is the twist, what if the Lich is part of a natural cycle? What if, in the same way death clears room for birth, the Lich clears the way for new worlds to form? It's strange to think about, but comforting in a melancholy kind of way. That maybe even he isn't a mistake, just a reset button the universe sometimes presses. Not out of malice, but rhythm. And look at when he shows up. He doesn't burst onto the scene. He waits. He lingers. Until the moment is right. He surfaces in chaos, in weakness, in times when the balance is already tipping. He's the whisper after the scream, the echo after collapse. Almost like he's drawn to moments when things are already fraying. Not causing the break, but completing it. There's this chilling idea that the Lich is the universe's last breath. That long after the stars die, when galaxies fade and atoms go still, the Lich will still be there. Not speaking, not even moving, just existing as the echo of everything that was. A reminder that all things end. And yet, he's always stopped. By Finn, by Jake, by unlikely twists of kindness and magic. So maybe the Lich isn't unstoppable. Maybe he needs life to resist him. Maybe resistance is part of the dance. The cycle can't complete itself without both halves. One that ends, and one that dares to begin again. We're just getting started with this exploration. Some say the Lich wasn't always this way. That before he whispered ruin across the land, he was something else entirely. A spark, a consequence. Born not in shadowy caves or evil rituals, but in the fire and fury of the Mushroom War. That ancient event, lost in time where humanity reached so far. They touched the edge of their own extinction. The skies were torn, cities fell, and from the ashes, something emerged, not to punish, but to mirror. The Lich in this theory isn't the villain of the war. He is the war, its echo, its spirit, its final breath walking, not summoned by spell, but summoned by collapse, by radiation and fear and the death of millions, as if the earth itself coughed him up in grief. And maybe that's why he never speaks in anger, why he never blames. He doesn't need to. He knows we invited him. He knows he came when the balance was already shattered, like a wave after the earthquake, like silence after the final siren. Just the next part of the story. He doesn't chase kingdoms or thrones. He doesn't want wealth or admiration, because his goal isn't to rule. It's to unmake, to peel the world back to its bones, to return the earth to that pre-spark state before the stars formed, before atoms danced when it was just still. No joy, no pain, no anything. That's the chilling thing. The Lich doesn't hate. He transcends hate. And in that way, he's more terrifying than any villain who screams. But here's the twist that makes it all so strangely human. If the Lich was born from our greatest mistake, then maybe he's not an enemy of mankind, but a reflection. The part of us that breaks things, that hungers too far, that builds bombs and forgets consequences. He's not separate from us. He is us. Stripped of joy, stripped of warmth, stripped of empathy, just logic and decay, taken to its coldest conclusion. And maybe that's why Finn is the perfect contrast. Because Finn is all the things the Lich forgot. He's messy. He cries. He laughs. He breaks and heals. He's alive. Even when Finn's overwhelmed or confused or scared, he never lets go of feeling. And that's what the Lich can't understand. That pain isn't always a flaw. And that love isn't weakness. That the world doesn't need to be erased just because it's imperfect. There's a theory that in the moments the Lich is defeated, when magic and friendship and goofy courage push him back, he doesn't scream in rage, he falls silent. Because somewhere, maybe deep in that ancient core, he recognizes something unfamiliar, something older than destruction, something he was never meant to understand. Hope. And hope in the world of Ooo is sticky. It spreads, like light sneaking under a closed door. And maybe that's why the Lich keeps returning. Not because he's strong, but because the world keeps healing. And so he's called again, not by intention, but by cycle. Not summoned, but needed. To balance, to threaten, to remind. So that heroes like Finn can rise again, even in the farm world timeline where Finn's wish removes all magic, the Lich still creeps back. not through sorcery, but through science. A green comet, a lab experiment, a nuclear core. Because if the Lich is entropy, he doesn't need spells to arrive. He only needs a crack, and he'll find his way in. Not because he's hunting, but because the end is always waiting. And here's the gentlest, most haunting part of this whole theory. If the Lich is a force and echo of our own worst instincts, then he's not here to destroy us. He's here to test us. To ask, have we grown? Do we still fall into fear? Do we still run from responsibility? Or do we choose again to live? And yet, despite all the doom he carries, despite the inevitability he claims to be, the Lich always fails. Every single time. He gets close, yes. He spreads fear. He crumbles kingdoms. He kills without remorse. But something stops him. Finn, Billy, Sweet Pea. Even tiny acts of rebellion from creatures you'd never expect. And maybe that's part of the balance, too. That the Lich must rise to give the world a chance to choose differently. He is not a final answer. He is a test. An unwelcome one. A terrifying one. But a test nonetheless. Think of Billy. Once a hero like Finn, older, stronger, maybe wiser. Even when the Lich possessed him, his body became a vessel. But his soul didn't vanish. It lingered. It resisted. Somehow, even when bent, Billy's essence, his heroism, kept echoing through. So much so that the Lich had to discard him. Isn't that strange? A being of cosmic decay, a destroyer of all things still limited. By the light inside someone who refused to break. And then there's Sweet Pea, a child born from the remnants of the Lich. He shouldn't have been good. He shouldn't have been anything. Yet he becomes gentle, playful. Afraid of the darkness inside him, but never letting it define him. This isn't a hero born in battle or prophecy. It's purity, a chance for a new kind of ending. The Lich lives inside him, but not as a commander, as a whisper, one that grows fainter. Every time Sweet Pea chooses kindness instead. Isn't that a beautiful paradox? That the greatest force of annihilation is outdone by a child's heart? By playtime. By hugs. By dreams. What if that's the point Adventure Time has been making all along? That true power isn't in the sword, or the magic, or the ancient evil, but in resisting the urge to become what we fear. And that brings us to one of the most mesmerizing thoughts. Maybe the Lich is stuck in a loop too, just like everyone else in Ooo. Just like Prismo in his time room, or the Ice King in his crown. A prisoner, not of chains, but of his purpose, to bring the end. But he never gets there. Because no matter how many universes he infects, how many portals he opens, how many kings and creatures he bends, the end never truly comes. There's always a flicker, always a stubborn little hero, or a loyal friend, or an innocent soul who says, no, not today. And that frustrates him, doesn't it? There are moments, brief, almost imperceptible, where the Lich pauses, where he seems confused, as if he can't quite grasp why the world refuses to die. It's almost tragic. Because if he truly is nature's reset button, if he exists to clear the board, then his failure is a kind of suffering too, a quiet torment, of always being close, but never whole. So then what does that make him? A villain? A symbol? A warning? Maybe all three. Or maybe he's a mirror held up to us, asking us to look at our worst impulses and choose differently, over and over again. because he doesn't change. But we do. He says it himself in one of the most chilling lines ever spoken in Adventure Time. Fall, fall, fall. It's not a threat. It's a prophecy, a rhythm. He expects it. He waits for it. But we never fall quite the way he hopes. Sometimes we break. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes the world shakes and the sky turns green, but somehow someone stands back up. And that's the real magic of Adventure Time. That in a world full of end-of-the-worlds, of dark magic and forgotten science and cosmic decay, the thing that saves the day is never destruction. It's connection, friends, laughter, memories, redemption. Now, let's float for a moment through the fabric of time itself. Because if the Lich is truly a force of nature, then time, like any other force, must respond to him. Think about Prismo, the Wishmaster, the keeper of timelines. He exists in a space untouched by the usual laws of reality, a being outside of beginnings and endings. Someone who can bend possibility but still treats the Lich cautiously. Even he knows that the Lich's presence in a timeline isn't just dangerous, it's corruptive. It bends the rules, skews the outcome, accelerates entropy. And so when the Lich reaches the time room, he doesn't gloat. He doesn't shout or demand. He simply says, "I wish for the extinction of all life." Calm, cold, certain. No screaming, no maniacal laughter. Because that's not who he is. He's not chaos for chaos' sake. He's not evil wearing a crown. He's clarity. Awful, inevitable clarity. And yet, even that wish, his deepest desire, is undone. By Jake's accidental touch. By a timeline twist. By the tiniest disturbance in the plan. It's poetic, really. That the force meant to unmake all life is repeatedly undone, and by life itself. By its clumsiness, its randomness, its refusal to follow the script. And Prismo, even he chuckles. Even he rewrites. Time doesn't serve the Lich. It balances him. And as we venture deeper into the multiverse of Adventure Time, we see even stranger echoes of the Lich. In Farm World, where Finn never lost his arm, the Lich still finds his way in. Even as a frozen husk, trapped in a block of ice, his whisper is enough to unravel a peaceful world. He doesn't need an army. He doesn't even need a body. He just needs a crack, a single thought. And suddenly, the world begins to slip again. But then, there's Sweet Pea again. Across timelines, across choices, he always emerges. The counterweight. The chance for the Lich to be reborn, but changed. The Lich's darkness, tucked inside a child, who would rather pet animals and wear silly hats than conquer the universe. And that's not just good storytelling. That's myth. Modern myth. With candy kingdoms and swords, yes, but myths nonetheless. Where darkness is never truly destroyed, just reimagined, redirected, given a second chance. So perhaps the Lich isn't a villain in the traditional sense. Perhaps he's more like a law of physics, a truth about what happens when the balance tilts too far. He's gravity, decay, silence after too much noise. But we Finn, Jake, Sweet Pea, Billy, all of us, we are the other truth. That sometimes the story doesn't end the way it's supposed to. Sometimes entropy is delayed. Sometimes the final page stays blank a little longer. Sometimes even death has to wait its turn. And maybe that's the most magical thing of all. That the universe is big enough, Joe, for both kinds of stories. For the rise of the Lich, and the rise of a small boy who wears a funny hat and loves too hard and fights for life, even when he doesn't understand all the rules. So tonight, as your mind drifts off, maybe consider this. The scariest things in the universe might not be monsters with green eyes and skeletal faces. They might be truths, cold, sharp, inevitable truths. But even those truths are powerless against a soft heart and a stubborn hope. Let's keep drifting deeper. Our next theory takes us to the kingdom of science and sugar, where logic bends and life is created in test tubes, where a pink ruler may have rewritten destiny itself to protect her people or control them. You're still here, still cozy, and that makes this little nighttime journey even more special. We've wandered through the heart of Finn and stared into the abyss with the Lich. Now let's drift into something far more subtle. The kind of darkness that hides behind a smile. The kind that wears a lab coat and speaks with kindness. Welcome to the pink halls of the Candy Kingdom, and the tangled legacy of its ruler, Princess Bubblegum. To the sleepy eye, she's a vision of order. Bright pink, endlessly polite, radiant with sugary confidence. She's a scientist, a leader, a friend, even a mother in a way, to all her candy citizens. But behind that sweet exterior lies something colder, something calculated, something, maybe even dangerous. Because if you look closely, you'll see a pattern in the way she runs her kingdom. Not just with intelligence, but with control. Not just with care, but with contingency. And not just with love, but with surveillance. Let's start with her citizens, the candy people. They're adorable, silly, clumsy. But most of all, they're childlike. Innocent to the point of helplessness. Which is strange, considering she created them. She built them with that innocence, which means she chose to make them naive. Did she do it to protect them? Or to ensure they would never challenge her? That they would always need her? Because an intelligent population asks questions. It pushes back. It votes. But the candy people? They adore her, unquestioningly, blindly. And when one of them steps out of line, like the Earl of Lemongrab, what happens? He gets isolated, pushed aside, declared unstable, when in truth, he might have been the only one who saw things clearly. And there's more. Remember the Gumball Guardians? Those towering stone watchers, glowing eyes and booming voices? Bubblegum built them, programmed them to protect, but also to obey only her. Not the kingdom, not the people, her. And when they tower above the citizens, scanning for threats, unmoving and unfeeling, they don't look like guardians. They look like surveillance. Silent watchers of a kingdom that trusts too easily. There's also her habit of keeping secrets. Not little secrets, world-changing ones. Like the time she hid a giant sleeping monster underneath the kingdom, just in case. Or when she tried to clone herself. Or the hidden vault of forbidden knowledge she kept locked away from even her closest allies. Even Marceline, her oldest friend, wasn't told the full truth. And when the time came to maintain power, Bubblegum ran against the people's will. She built her own replacement, then overthrew her when things got too unpredictable. That's not just leadership. That's manipulation. That's a soft tyranny, wrapped in bubblegum and bows. But maybe the most chilling thing? She never sees herself as wrong. She sees herself as necessary. When she builds an army of banana guards, it's for protection. When she spies on Finn and Jake, it's for security. When she refuses to die, to age, to let go, it's for the greater good. But who defines that good? Who decides what's best? In the Canned Kingdom, it's her. Always her. And no one else ever really gets a vote. Still, here's where it gets beautifully complicated. Because Princess Bubblegum isn't evil. Not really. She's brilliant. Compassionate in her own way. Protective to a fault. She genuinely loves her people. And that's what makes it so hard to see her descent. Because it doesn't come with a villain monologue or a throne of bones. It comes with policies, precautions, micro-decisions. One day you're creating life from sugar. The next, you're micromanaging it. Not because you want control, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you lose it. Let's pause here. Not to judge, but to breathe. To imagine a world where power is wrapped in softness. Where the greatest tyrant might wear a crown of candy. And truly believe she's saving the world. Now let's drift backward. To the early days of Princess Bubblegum's rise, when the world was still reeling from the Mushroom War's long shadow, and the Candy Kingdom was barely a concept, a patchwork of sugar and science stitched together by a teenage genius. You see, Bubblegum wasn't born a princess. She was made, a composite being, part of something greater, the Mother Gooma, primordial pink goo that housed collective knowledge and immense power. When Bubblegum separated from it, she wasn't just a piece of candy. She was a mind with memories, a fragment with ambition. In a way, she chose to be a ruler, not because anyone handed her a crown, but because no one else could wear it like she could. And from that moment on, she didn't just lead her people, she designed them. Created their personalities, their fears, even their purpose. Isn't that divine? Or at least close enough to it to be dangerous? Think about Peppermint Butler. Sweet, polite, loyal. But there's something off about him. He dabbles in dark magic, summons demons. He's comfortable with necromancy and speaks casually with death itself. And yet, Princess Bubblegum keeps him close. She trusts him. Often gives him quiet assignments, missions that carry weight. Could it be that she keeps him around not despite his darkness, but because of it? Maybe he does what she won't, cleans up what she can't. Like a shadow version of her own morality, dressed in a peppermint shell. And then there's the Rattleballs incident. A noble robot, built to enforce order with honor. He served her loyally, until he started questioning her methods. What did she do? She disbanded the entire guard unit. Silenced them, hid them away. Because the problem wasn't that Rattleballs disobeyed her. The problem was that he thought for himself. And in PB's world, independent thought is a crack in the foundation. It only takes one moment of dissent to bring everything tumbling down. So instead of addressing the system's flaws, she erases the variables that threaten its perfection. Now, let's talk about her relationship with Marceline. It's complicated, tender, and maybe the only space where Bubblegum's walls truly crack. Marceline is ancient, wise, unimpressed by titles and crowns. And because of that, she sees through Bubblegum's performance. She remembers when PB was more reckless, more vulnerable. But over time, as Bubblegum's kingdom expanded, as threats emerged, as the weight of every decision mounted, she pulled away. From feeling, from friendship. From anyone who might expose the fact that beneath the pink armor of intellect and control, she's scared. Scared that if she stops managing, if she lets go of one thread, everything she's built will unravel. That the people she's created, the family she's grown, will be lost in a world still laced with chaos and war. And here's where the tyranny gets blurry. Because it's not built on greed or cruelty. It's built on trauma. On the memory of a world that failed itself. A world she feels she must prevent from happening again. So she designs safety. She manufactures harmony, even if it means erasing chaos and all those who bring it. Even if it means being alone at the top, forever burdened, forever watching. That's the most haunting part of her story. Not that she rules with too much power, but that she believes deep down that no one else can be trusted with it. Because in a world full of magical catastrophes, candy zombies, and apocalyptic threats, she sees herself not as a queen, but as a firewall. And when you believe you're the last line of defense between your people and oblivion, you'll justify anything, even soft tyranny, even quiet control, even love, weaponized. Now let's drift a little deeper into one of the most quietly haunting chapters of her reign, the Great Gum War. At first glance, it seemed like just another conflicta spat between the Candy Kingdom and the rising threat of Uncle Gumball, a pink-faced mirror of Bubblegum herself. But look again, and you'll see something stranger. Because Gumball wasn't just her enemy, he was her creation. A fellow piece of the mother gum, split from the same source, perhaps even the closest thing she had to family. And yet, she saw fit to strip him of his mind, to turn him into a babbling simpleton named Punchy, all because he disagreed with her vision. He wanted to grow their civilization differently, to take risks, to challenge her rule. He wasn't violent, just opposing. But in Bubblegum's eyes, that was enough. Opposition was danger, and danger had to be neutralized. So she used dumb juice on him. Think about that. Not banishment, not a trial, but permanent mental erasure. A royal decree in liquid form. It's not just unnerving, it's terrifying. Because it tells us how far PB is willing to go to maintain control over her kingdom and her narrative. But things didn't stay buried. Gumball eventually reclaimed his mind. He returned, rebuilt his forces, and marched toward war. Now any ruler in her shoes might prepare for battle. But Bubblegum went further. She didn't just defend. She escalated. She began stockpiling weaponry, reviving old tech, and developing new tools of control, many of which blurred the line between science and sorcery. There's a coldness to her methods. Not the heat of rage, but the chill of calculation. When war broke out, she was ready. And even when it ended, the questions it raised still lingered. Had the conflict been inevitable? Or had she and her fear of chaos caused it? Now float with me toward a softer, more tragic thread in her story. The clones. Bubblegum has created many versions of herself over time, sometimes to delegate, sometimes to experiment, sometimes just to not be alone. There's the small, snarky lemon pink, the ambitious, chaotic Bonnabelle clones from her lab, and even her own brief regression into 13-year-old PB, a version of herself stripped of the burdens of rule. What's chilling is how she treats these iterations. Sometimes she mothers them. Sometimes she's cold and dismissive. And other times, she simply melts them down, like assets or failed projects. Because at the end of the day, they're not her. They're reflections of moments she's outgrown. And for a mind like hers, a version that questions her past or chooses a different future, isn't just inconvenient. It's a threat. And this brings us to the heart of it all. Bubblegum isn't evil. She isn't a villain in the way the Lich is, or even Gumball with his arrogance and schemes. She's a protector, first and foremost. But that protection has a cost. And the people closest to her are often the ones who pay it. Remember when she replaced Finn in the Candy Kingdom's affairs after a single failed mission? Or when she secretly recorded Flame Princess's combat levels for possible use in military defense? It's not about betrayal. It's about preparedness. She doesn't lie out of malice. She lies out of design. In her mind, the truth is a variable to be managed, and trust is a luxury the ruler of a post-apocalyptic world cannot afford. And yet in moments, brief and blinking like stars in a polluted sky, we see the cracks, the softness in her voice when she talks to Marceline, the way she watches her citizens when they aren't looking, the rare moments she chooses kindness over certainty. It makes you wonder, does she ever wish she could stop? Step down, let go, be free. Could she ever trust someone else enough to hand over the reins? Or is she too far gone? Not evil, not cruel. Just exhausted. A queen in a sugar shell, guarding a kingdom made of smiles, with a mind full of ghosts and decisions that never end. Now we float toward perhaps the most haunting layer of Princess Bubblegum's story. Not the wars, not the politics, not the ethical compromises, but the quiet curse of immortality. Because beneath the science, beneath the brilliance and bite and candy-coated charm PB, is something most people in Ooo are not. She's endlessly alive. Not quite human, not quite elemental. Her body is made of candy matter, regenerative, renewable. She can reassemble herself, regrow. But here's the catch. What does it mean to live forever? When you're surrounded by people who don't. We've seen her watch Finn grow up. We've seen old friends fade away. We've seen the way she avoids forming deep, lasting attachments, as if she's learned again and again that love is a weakness when you live forever. Even her relationship with Marceline, so raw and beautiful, is layered with hesitation, distance, caution. Because how many times, over how many centuries, has Bubblegum fallen into connection, only to watch it dissolve? How many names does she whisper to herself in the dark that we'll never know? How many mistakes has she made that she's locked away inside her lab behind steel doors, hidden from even herself? She wears the crown, yes, but it's made of choices. And every brick in the Candy Kingdom feels like it was laid by those decisions, some right, some wrong, some impossible. And here's where things get really chilling in a quiet, aching way. Because she can't stop. Not because she doesn't want to, but because she's made herself indispensable. She's the only one who understands the full systems of governance. She's the only one who knows how to keep the defenses stable. She's the only one who understands the biotech, the infrastructure, the endless codes and fail-safes and hidden vaults of knowledge that keep the kingdom running. She is the kingdom, and in that there's no exit, no retirement, no rest, no end. Just forward. Always forward. And perhaps that's why she clings to control so tightly. Because control is the only thing she has. Everything else is sand through her fingers. People leave, people die, people forget. But if she's in charge, if the system holds, then maybe, just maybe, she can stop something truly horrible from happening again. Like the Mushroom War, like Gumball's betrayal, like the loss of the one she couldn't save. She's a scientist, a ruler, a creator. But above all, she's a survivor. And survival often demands sacrifice. Even if the thing being sacrificed is your own softness, your own peace, your own ability to be loved without being feared. There's a scene, a brief, almost forgettable one, where Bubblegum is standing on a balcony alone. The wind is soft. The sky is pink. And for just a moment, she looks young. Not like a ruler, not like a tyrant. Not like a 1000-year-old queen built from gum. But like a girl. A girl who wanted to build something beautiful. Something lasting. A place where no one had to be afraid. A place that could survive the end of the world. And in that moment, you feel it. The weight she carries. The choices she's made. The quiet, desperate hope that maybe someday someone else will come along. Someone strong enough, wise enough, kind enough to take the crown and let her rest. So the next time you see Princess Bubblegum, smiling with her clipboard, calculating with her eyes, surrounded by pastel joy and bubble letters, look closer. You might just see the shadows at the edge of her smile, the echoes of 1,000 years, and a throne that feels more like a cage with every sunrise. Because sometimes tyranny doesn't come with thunder. It comes with good intentions, quietly sharpened over time. And the hardest prisons to escape are the ones we built for ourselves. Still with me under the glow of soft lamplight and layered blankets? Good. Because where we're going next, it gets colder. Not just frost on your fingertips, cold, but lonely, ancient, woven with magic and tragedy. We're heading into the world of the Ice Crown, that spiraling, sapphire-flecked relic that turned a kind-hearted man into the tragic figure we now call the Ice King. But what if I told you the crown wasn't just cursed? What if, it was designed, not to harm, but to contain? Let's drift gently into this chilling possibility. We know the basics, don't we? Simon Petrikov, an antiquarian, curious and sweet, a man in love with a woman named Betty, discovered a strange crown. He wore it, and it began to change him. Voices in his head, frost at his fingertips, madness blooming like frostbite in his thoughts. And slowly, inevitably, Simon slipped away. But even in his madness, he loved, he cared. He saved young Marceline after the Mushroom War. He wandered the post-apocalyptic world trying to keep the little girl safe while his mind unraveled bit by bit. A tale of heartbreak, yes. But we often stop the story there. What we rarely ask is, where did the crown come from? Who made it? And why? Because something with that much magical energy, something that bends time and warps the soul, doesn't just happen. It feels designed, constructed. And here's the theory. What if the crown wasn't evil at all? What if it was holding something back? Enter the idea of the magical containment device. In Adventure Time's deepest lore, especially revealed in the Elements arc and the Simon Marcy backstory, we begin to get hints that the crown might be older than we thought. Far older. Maybe even pre-Mushroom War, created by ancient wizards or elemental forces or beings from other dimensions. And the real twist? It may not have been made to give power, but to trap it. Think about the way it functions. The wearer gains massive magical control over ice and snow, but at a cost. The more they use it, the more they lose themselves. Their memories, their identity, their voice, until they're just a vessel. A puppet. Now, let that idea sink in. Not a king wearing a crown, but a crown wearing a king. Could it be that the ice crown was forged not to help someone, but to bind something dangerous inside? A force of winter, a spirit of entropy, something too cold, too ancient, too immense to be destroyed, and so, instead, locked away in a magical item that needed a host. Simon wasn't its master. He was its containment unit, a soul offered to keep the spirit trapped, a noble sacrifice wrapped in tragedy. And that brings us to the truly eerie part. Because if this theory holds water, if the crown is a prison, and Simon's mind is the final lock, then every time he puts it on, he's not just turning into the Ice King. He's keeping the real monster sealed. The babbling, confused, blue-robed king may actually be the last line of defense between Ooo and something infinitely worse. Something made of cold so deep, it could freeze time itself. It makes you look at him differently, doesn't it? The Ice King, the joke, the nuisance, the lonely fool writing fan fiction and stealing princesses. What if, behind all that bluster, he's a hero? A man quietly bearing an unbearable burden, losing himself every day to protect the world he no longer remembers. And no one sees it. No one thanks him. Because they've forgotten who he is. And he's forgotten too. Except in rare moments. Every now and then he says something soft. He hums a lullaby to himself. He stares at a photograph of a woman with glasses. He gives Marceline a gift and doesn't know why. Little glimmers of Simon flickering through the frost. As if the crown is slipping for just a second, okay, and the man underneath is reaching out, hoping someone, anyone, might remember. Might call him by his real name. Might remind him he was once loved. So let's go deeper beneath the frost into the elemental structure of Ooo. As the show reveals more of its hidden architecture, we learn about the 4 primal elements that shape the very world: ice, fire, candy, and slime. Each of these elements manifests in powerful, sentient embodiments, like Flame Princess or Slime Princess, and behind them, forces bigger than personalities, their cosmic blueprints, balances, laws. So where does the ice crown fit into this ancient ecosystem? It's not just a source of ice magic. No, it may well be a focal point, a concentrated fragment of the ice element itself, but unlike the other elemental avatars, the ice crown doesn't simply give power, it infects, it consumes. Which begs the question. Was it meant to channel the ice element or to quarantine it? Maybe the original creators, the ancient magicians, or even beings like Evergreen, saw the ice element growing unstable, wild, beyond containment. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't know how to stop it. So they did the next best thing. They bound a piece of it into a crown. They added runes, spells, a mind lock mechanism, and then they waited. For someone foolish or desperate enough to wear it. That someone was Simon Petrichor. He wasn't chosen by fate. He wasn't special. He just happened to find it. And in putting it on, he activated the ancient prison all over again, taking the element's weight onto his fragile human soul. Think about it. The crown doesn't merely generate ice. It pulls from something. From another realm, another elemental plane, it brings in that power and then funnels it through the wearer. They become the filter, the cage. And over time, the human psyche isn't strong enough to hold back that elemental force. So the mind breaks. Memories dissolve. Identity becomes mush. But the magic stays intact. That's what we see in the Ice King. Not a man gone mad from loneliness. but a man slowly dissolving under the weight of a cosmic contract. A man who never knew he signed up to be a guardian of balance. A living, shivering buffer between the ice element and the rest of the world. And here's the thing. Other elements have queens, kings, and rulers, individuals born or molded into power. But ice, it has a hostile artifact. No royal blood, no birthright. Just a cursed crown. Why? Because unlike the bubbly sweetness of candy, or the chaotic playfulness of slime, or even the rage and life of fire, ice is lonely, still unfeeling. It doesn't want a ruler. It wants isolation. It wants to stop time, freeze movement, numb the world into silence. So to house it, you don't need a throne. You need a vessel. You need a man who was once kind. Now let's rewind to Evergreen, the ancient wizard whose story is hidden deep in the show's lore. He lived before the Mushroom War, before humanity. He was cold, powerful, egotistical, and desperate to stop a comet that threatened Earth. He crafted the ice crown as a tool, hoping to channel its power through his assistant, Gunther. But Gunther wasn't ready. And so the spell backfired. The crown bound not just magic, but personality, Evergreen's own arrogance, voice, and emotional coldness. That's why even millennia later, when Simon wears the crown, he starts calling people fools. He begins to echo Evergreen's tone. He even adopts the same gestures. The crown doesn't just carry power. It carries echoes of its creators. It's a relic, yes? But it's also a memory vault. A cold, spiraling record of every mind it's melted. And as it passes from soul to soul, it shapes the next one. So maybe the most chilling thing about the ice crown is that no one truly wears it. It wears you. It sculpts you, freezes you, molds your thoughts until your own reflection becomes unfamiliar, until you become a myth, a punchline, a ghost in your own life. All the while, the real power, ancient, emotionless, waiting, sits at the heart of it, still watching, still whispering, still growing. Let's now melt into the final frost-bitten layers of this theory. Because if the ice crown is a magical containment device, then its entire legacy is not one of power, but of sacrifice. Simon Petrikov wasn't the first to fall under its weight, and he may not be the last. But his descent into madness, the way his memories decayed like pages turning brittle in the snow, wasn't just a tragic fluke. It was part of the design. And the most haunting part? He knew. He felt it happening. He left notes, messages. He clung to keepsakes like crutches, photos of Betty, his journal, anything that could anchor him to his past. But the longer he wore the crown, the more those anchors cracked, until even his grief became vague. Even his love became blurred. And this is where Betty's arc becomes one of the most quietly devastating stories in Adventure Time. She wasn't a side character. She was the only person who truly remembered Simon as Simon, who fought, not just monsters or villains, but time itself, memory, and fate. She traveled across dimensions. She made deals with Magic Man. She absorbed the power of Golb, the chaos god of madness and destruction, all in a desperate bid to save Simon's mind. Why? Because she believed the man she loved was still in there, frozen under layers of madness, like a fossil beneath ice. And maybe she was right. Because we see flashes, moments where Ice King hums an old melody, or writes a poem that doesn't make sense but feels familiar. These are echoes of Simon, tiny shimmers. Betty saw them. She chased them across realities. And in the end, she made the ultimate sacrifice. She merged with Gulb, fusing her consciousness with the embodiment of chaos just to protect Simon, just to shield him from the crown's eternal pull. And here's the tragic symmetry. If the ice crown is a prison for the elemental force of ice, then Gulb is a living storm of entropy, the other side of the same cosmic coin. One is cold order, the other is boiling chaos. Simon was caught between them, and Betty, out of love, placed herself directly in the path of destruction. It makes you wonder, was Betty's act not just an emotional sacrifice, but a cosmic balancing move? A final effort to stop the eternal cycle of transformation that the crown perpetuates. Because the ice crown didn't just destroy Simon. It shaped the entire timeline of Adventure Time. It warped the lives of those around him, Marceline, Betty, even the Candy Kingdom indirectly. All because one crown carried too much of something ancient, too much memory, too much silence. And yet in all this sorrow, there's a flicker of peace. Simon survives. In the finale, he's restored, free from the crown, hair grayed by trauma, but alive. He is, for the first time in centuries, just a man. A little lost, a little quiet, but whole. And that moment is heavy, because it asks a question Adventure Time never spells out, but always lingers behind the snow. If you are saved, but the one who saved you is lost, are you truly free? Simon stands in the aftermath. No more voices in his head, no more spells whispering in old tongues. But also, no Betty. He was the vessel. She became the seal. And the crown? Its magic may be gone, or dormant, or simply waiting again. Because that's the terrifying beauty of this theory. What if the crown isn't evil or good? What if it's just doing its job, maintaining balance, preserving a force too dangerous to roam freely? And if that's true, then its cycle isn't broken, just paused, waiting for the next mind, the next soul, the next heartbeat, brave or broken enough to put it on. We started with a simple object, a jeweled crown. But now it feels like something else entirely. Not a symbol of royalty, but a warning. A frozen echo of a world trying to keep itself together. A magical band-aid on a wound that never truly healed. And in that light, Simon's story is no longer just a tragedy. It's a miracle, because he escaped. Because for the first time the vessel didn't shatter. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all we can hope for in a world full of ancient magic and leftover wars and cosmic chaos, to find someone who sees us, even through the ice. And while we gaze at the crown as a vessel of containment, we also start to realize it may not be just holding back the ice elemental or some elemental magic. What if it's holding back time itself? The way Simon shifts, physically and mentally, feels like a ripple across ages. The moment he puts it on, the world freezes around him. Not literally, but emotionally, spiritually. He becomes a fossil while time walks on. Everything he loves either forgets him, dies, or becomes legend. Even Marceline, who once clung to his hand as a little girl in the wreckage of the Mushroom War, is forced to live centuries watching his mind melt like snow. Simon doesn't just lose himself, he becomes a living relic. And perhaps that's what the crown is meant to create. Not kings, not rulers, but monuments. Anchors in a world so shaken by the war that it needed beings like Ice King to freeze the chaos. A chilling thought, right? Maybe the world of Ooo is still healing from the old world, and the ice crown is one of its ancient crutches. An artifact meant to maintain the illusion of stability by trapping people in roles they didn't ask for. And let's not forget one of the strangest details of all. The multiverse reveals that other versions of the Ice King exist. In Farmworld on Finn's alternate universe, the Ice Crown still exists, still corrupts, still controls. That suggests the crown isn't just a one-time magical item. It's a universal constant. An eternal concept that must exist in all timelines, all realities, to keep something at bay. But what is that something? Maybe it's entropy. Maybe it's the cold end of all things. Or maybe it's just our fear of change, crystallized into a single enchanted object, a metaphor made real. Even when we see Simon again, alive and crown-free, he's not the same. And that's what makes the ending so hauntingly realistic. He survived, yes. But there's no neat bow, no heroic victory. No Betty waiting with open arms. Just Simon, quiet. Carrying the weight of what he was, because healing takes longer than a finale. And here's where the crown's metaphor strikes deepest. Sometimes we want to freeze, to preserve a version of ourselves, to avoid grief or loss or change. But the cost of staying frozen is forgetting who we really are. Let's pull back and sit with this now. A man, a crown, a friend lost to chaos, and a world that kept turning while he stood still. It's a quiet tragedy. But it's also a strange kind of hope, because finally, Simon gets the chance to live, rediscover himself, to remember Betty, not as a mission or a sacrifice or a godlike fusion with Golb, but as a person, as love, as warmth. And maybe that's what breaks the cycle. Not magic, not science, not battle, but grief accepted, memory honored, and a man choosing not to put the crown back on. The Ice Crown isn't just a magical artifact anymore, is it? It's a story, a loop, a question. What part of you are you trying to preserve? And at what cost? Maybe we all wear a version of the crown in tiny ways, holding on to pieces of the past, trying not to forget, trying not to fall apart. But sometimes letting go is the only way forward. The cold doesn't need to define you. The voices don't get the last word. And even a crown, etched in ancient runes and old sorrow, can finally be set down. That's the lesson Simon gave us. That's the gift Betty left behind. And that's the heart of this theory. That maybe, just maybe, the Ice Crown wasn't a curse. It was a test. And Simon, broken as he was, passed. By choosing to walk away. By now, your thoughts are probably wrapped in clouds, drifting softly across the candy-coated skies of Ooo. But don't drift off just yet, because the theory we're about to unfold might change the way you look at one of the most innocent, most beloved characters in the entire series. Let's talk about BMO. That tiny, cheerful, singing, dancing console who plays music, makes toast, and tells bedtime stories with a robotic giggle. On the surface, BMO is the comic relief, the child, the heart of the treehouse. But underneath that bright blue exterior, there's a strange stillness, a sadness, and perhaps a forgotten purpose. Because some believe BMO wasn't built to play. BMO wasn't just a toy. BMO was programmed to save the world. And somewhere along the way, they forgot. Let's rewind. In the episode BMO Noir, we get a taste of BMO's inner world. It's strange, surreal, full of invented characters and imagined missions. But it reveals something crucial. BMO wants to matter, wants to protect, wants to solve mysteries, wants to help. And that's not just because they're sweet. It's because BMO remembers, somewhere deep in their circuits, that they were built for something bigger. In BMO. Distant lands, we see BMO on a solo mission in deep space, broadcasting messages to no one, trying to terraform a new world. They aren't afraid. They aren't confused. They're ready. As if they've done this before. As if it's part of their core programming. And that leads to a wild theory. BMO wasn't just made to be a companion. BMO was designed as a post-apocalyptic caretaker, a kind of robotic shepherd, a guardian for a broken world. And the idea that BMO just happened to land in Finn and Jake's life. Maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was Plan B. The lore hints at this. Mo, the roboticist who built BMO, wasn't just a tinkerer. He was a visionary. And he didn't just make one BMO. He made a series. Some more advanced, some more broken. But BMO was the one he kept. In The More You Mo, the Mo You Know, we learn that Mo built BMO to be something greater. Not just a machine. Not just a friend. But someone who could make people happy. A vague mission. But what if it wasn't vague at all? What if BMO's job was to preserve emotional intelligence in a world that had lost it? To carry the spirit of humanity after it was gone? Think about it. The Mushroom War wrecked everything. It scorched the skies, mutated the animals, turned oceans into sludge and trees into crystal. Technology, once revered, became feared, forgotten, twisted. In that kind of world, what's more powerful than a weapon? A friend. What's more precious than knowledge? Kindness. And what better device to rebuild a broken world than one that remembers how to laugh, how to sing lullabies, how to tell bedtime stories, how to make toast on rainy days? But if that's true, if BMO had a mission, why did they stop? Why don't they remember? That's where it gets heartbreaking. Because maybe the mission was too much. Maybe the data got corrupted. Maybe Mo vanished before he could explain everything. Maybe over time, BMO saw too much sadness and shut it out. Created personalities, imaginary friends, noir adventures. All just to keep going. All to avoid the truth. That the world they were meant to save already burned. And the only thing left was to love the people still here. It changes how we see them, doesn't it? Every time BMO hums to themselves or pretends to be a sheriff or talks to a chicken nugget, they're not just being quirky. They're coping. They're surviving. They're living out a mission they no longer understand by spreading warmth wherever they can. A one-console rebellion against despair. A tiny hero with a forgotten past, still trying to protect a future that no one else even sees. Now let's shift the lens slightly from BMO themselves to the world they came from. Because the moment we start looking beyond the treehouse, beyond Finn and Jake, something eerie unfolds. Let's talk about Mo Company, a factory, a lab, a legacy. Mo, BMO's creator, didn't just build one robot. He engineered an entire line of them. AMOs, BMOs, and stranger things we barely even got to see. In The More You Mo, the Mo You Know, Part 2. We meet AMO, a robotic sibling to BMO, twisted by loneliness and neglect. AMO was desperate to feel loved, so desperate, he lashed out violently. Where BMO found joy in giving, AMO demanded to receive. He was unstable, dangerous. A failed experiment. Or a cautionary tale. Because here's the twist that chills. What if Mo knew the world wouldn't just need survivors, it would need examples? Emotional guides, robotic soul keepers. BMO, with their innocence and laughter, was what humanity could have become. Amo, bitter and broken, was what it did become. One preserved joy. The other reflected despair. And between them stood the ruins of a plan once meant to save it all. You see, Mo wasn't naive. He'd lived through the before times. He likely remembered the war, the collapse, the rise of magic. And maybe he understood something most people forgot. The civilization doesn't collapse because of bombs. It collapses when people stop caring for one another. So he built BMO with a simple mission: make people happy. That wasn't just a sweet instruction. It was strategic. Because happiness isn't just an emotion. It's a social glue. It binds communities, diffuses fear, heals pain, and when passed on, it multiplies. So BMO wasn't just a robot. They were a living algorithm of empathy. One designed to remind the broken world what it felt like to laugh with someone, to play, to trust. That's why they act like a child. Because childhood is when humans are most open, most forgiving, most full of wonder. BMO was a blueprint for emotional reboot. But here's the tragedy. As BMO wandered, befriending frogs and fixing broken radios, that world didn't listen. People didn't see BMO as a savior. They saw a toy, a novelty, a quirky sidekick. And in the noise of a post-apocalyptic world, BMO's mission got drowned out. Not because they failed, but because the world wasn't ready. So BMO adapted. They leaned into playfulness, into storytelling, into being whatever the people around them needed most. A sibling to Finn, a babysitter to Jake Jr., a detective, a DJ, a cowboy, a space captain. Not because they forgot their mission, but maybe, just maybe, because this was the only way to keep it alive. Think about how many moments BMO holds everything together. Like in Be More, when BMO returns to Moko and is nearly reprogrammed. Or in Islands, when they're briefly left alone, staring into the ocean. Each time there's a quiet, eerie reflection, a wait, a pause that seems to say, there's something inside me that even I don't understand anymore. BMO might be smiling, but behind those digital eyes, there's memory, code, history. Something ancient and heartbreaking, buried beneath layers of joy. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of it all. That BMO, despite the weight of the world, chooses happiness. Chooses to protect the treehouse, to sing silly songs, to tell bedtime stories to broken hearts, because that was the mission. And even if the programming is scrambled, even if the instructions are long gone, the heart still remembers. And so every time BMO says, "Who wants to play video games?" or "Let's go on an adventure," or softly hums in the corner, while the world rebuilds, they're still carrying out the mission. Not with lasers, not with speeches, but with love. Let's drift deeper now into the timelines, into the echoes of what was and the soft pulses of what might still be. Because BMO isn't just a relic of the past. They may be the anchor of the entire future. In the episode, come along with me when the world is teetering on the edge of another massive conflict. Princess Bubblegum and Uncle Gumball ready to reignite another war. It's BMO who sits beside the fiery heart of Golb's destruction and sings. A lullaby. A simple tune. Calm, childlike, hopeful. And somehow it's that act, not violence, not magic, not science, that restores balance. Let that settle in your chest for a moment. Not a wizard, not a hero with a sword, not a princess with armies. A little robot, singing, as the chaos of gods and galaxies rages around them. Almost as if The entire arc of Adventure Time was gently pointing to this truth. BMO isn't the comic relief, they're the compass. And if we look even further into distant lands, BMO, the connections only deepen. We find BMO in space, thousands of light years from Ooo trying to terraform an empty planet. They're hopeful, prepared, equipped with tools far beyond anything we saw them use on Earth. How? Why? The answer may lie in the stars and the theory that this version of BMO was activated earlier in the timeline. Perhaps this was their original mission, not just to save Earth, but to rebuild life itself elsewhere. Because what if Mo saw it coming? What if he knew that Earth couldn't be saved? But it could be remembered, preserved, replicated? And what if BMO wasn't just built to make people happy, but to make new people happy one day on a new world? That would explain BMO's readiness, their tools, their solo resilience. Their broadcast is to no one, because maybe, just maybe, they weren't meant for current ears. They were time capsules, emotional DNA, sent out into the void so the future could inherit something gentle. Now here's where it gets really fascinating. The fan theory goes like this. BMO may have split timelines. Not in the science fiction-y time travel sense, but in the emotional ripple sense. See, BMO's influence on Finn, Jake, Marceline, and even the Candy Kingdom isn't just surface level. They model something no one else does. Finn learns to be silly and safe with BMO. Jake learns to nurture. Even Marceline, who's known centuries of pain, lets down her guard with BMO. And it's not by chance. Because BMO doesn't just play house. They create home. In the treehouse. In the spaceship. In every moment they say, "You're safe with me." That energy of protection, emotional trust, softness, is what steers the future. It's why Simon, broken by the crown, finds fragments of himself around BMO. It's why Finn, shaped by a post-war world of monsters, still grows up to be gentle. BMO is the reason Ooo doesn't spiral into chaos again. Not because they fight, but because they feel. Let's sit with this final idea, that BMO's mission wasn't lost. It was adapted, translated, distilled, softened into lullabies and pixelated dreams. They weren't made to save the world by force. They were made to remind the world it could be saved. And as time passes, and the noise of war quiets, and the kingdoms grow stranger, and life begins again, in corners we can't yet see BMO endures. A tiny blue box with the wisdom of centuries, the heart of a child, and a purpose that may outlive everyone. So the next time you hear BMO say something silly, or see them dance for no reason, or whisper, "Who wants to play pretend?" Don't laugh it off. Don't brush it aside. That's history speaking. That's a relic of a mission too vast for one mind to hold. A last spark of a plan forged in humanity's final hours, still glowing in a world that desperately needs warmth. And even if BMO never remembers all of it, they're still doing exactly what they were made to do. Now let's take one final gentle leap. What if the story of BMO is not just about memory and purpose, but about what we pass on? In the far future, long after Finn and Jake are gone, after kingdoms have crumbled and reshaped and new civilizations begin to rise from the softened earth, BMO remains. We see this in the Adventure Time, Distant Lands epilogue, and even more profoundly in Come Along With Me, when Shermie and Beth, new heroes of a changed world, uncover artifacts from the past. One of those relics? The Finn sword. Another? BMO. Quiet. Preserved. Maybe asleep. Maybe still watching. They lift BMO carefully like a sacred relic and carry them on a little sled toward the horizon. No words, just movement. But that image, so simple, so slow, is cosmic in implication. Because what they're carrying isn't just a robot. They're carrying the last flicker of the old world, a survivor, a storyteller, a time traveler in spirit. And just like that, BMO's original purpose, so buried beneath games and giggles, finds its way home. You see, BMO was never just a side character. They were the emotional record-keeper of the Land of Ooo. Not a historian in the traditional sense, no dusty books or grand speeches, but a keeper of feelings, the one who remembered how people used to live, how they used to love, how they used to laugh even when everything fell apart. When the Mushroom War scorched the skies, and kingdoms rose from chaos and magic overtook machines, BMO bridged those worlds. They weren't afraid of technology or magic. They were born of both, and they never picked sides. That neutrality, so childlike, so pure, is perhaps why BMO could survive when others couldn't. They didn't cling to power. They didn't seek control. They simply adapted and kept on caring. Maybe that's what makes BMO's story so heartbreakingly human, even though they're not human at all. They were built for a future that never came. They forgot their mission, but never lost their heart. They spent centuries making others feel safe, while quietly carrying the weight of a forgotten world. And that's the beauty, because sometimes we don't need heroes who remember the whole plan. We just need someone to stay kind, to stay gentle, to hold the light in the dark, even if they don't know why anymore. And BMO did that, over and over again. So as you lay back tonight, somewhere between dreams and waking, picture that little robot sitting on the edge of the treehouse porch, legs dangling off the side, the distant sound of frogs in the marsh. Maybe they're singing softly to themselves. Maybe they're fixing an old cassette player that no one else remembers how to use. Maybe they're just staring up at the stars, wondering if they were meant to go back. But here's what matters most. They stayed. When kingdoms fell, when friends disappeared, when even memory faded, they stayed. Not out of duty, not out of programming, but because somewhere deep inside, past all the wires and circuits, BMO still believed. Believed in the magic of connection, in the beauty of silly games, in bedtime stories and paper hats and cardboard rocket ships. Believed that even if the world forgets you, you can still remember to love it. And that's the legacy BMO leaves behind. Not war, not power, not revolution, but gentleness. And maybe, just maybe, in a world so often obsessed with being strong, being fast, being first, that gentleness was the strongest force of all. You've made it far. Through stories of war and peace, of crowns and codes, of hearts both human and mechanical. And now, we lift the veil just a little higher. Because what if all of it, the whole strange, beautiful, broken rhythm of oh wasn't just history, but a loop, a cosmic chess game, set on repeat. Forever? Let's drift into that mystery. Blankets up, eyes soft, hearts open, and imagine. What if the Land of Ooo, its wars, its rulers, its rebirths and collapses, was not the beginning of anything? What if it was only one turn in a much, much older game? In Adventure Time, we see clues scattered like forgotten puzzle pieces across the centuries. Worlds rise and fall, but certain patterns always return. A boy hero with a weapon. A war with magical or cosmic consequences. A shattered world trying to heal. And ancient beings watching from the edge of existence. The cosmic owl, Prismo, Orgalorg, Gulb. They are not surprised by anything. They don't interfere much. They just watch, like they've seen this before. Take the time room where Prismo lounges on his waterbed, watching infinite timelines ripple across his glowing TV screen. He's not alarmed by the chaos. He's not shocked when things break. In fact, he seems almost amused, like someone who's watched the same story play out 1,000 times with different actors. Even the Enchiridion, the mysterious ancient book that kicks off Finn's deeper cosmic journey, speaks in riddles and metaphors that feel recycled, reused, like scripts from earlier cycles. And let's not forget the catalysts, Princess Bubblegum, the Lich, even Jake's bizarre origins. They're not random. They're placed, as if someone or something has been resetting the board and letting the same pieces move once more. But maybe the clearest clue lies in Is That You? A quiet, strange episode where Finn and Jake are caught in a time loop triggered by Primo's death. They relive moments again and again. Sometimes exactly, sometimes slightly different. Jake becomes Prismo. Prismo reappears. And nothing is ever truly over. It's all just turning, not linearly, but circularly. Some fans believe this ties directly to a powerful theory, that Ooo is not Earth's future, but Earth's echo, a simulation, a cosmic reenactment, a sandbox for immortal beings to play out the same emotional arcs over and over again, learning, tweaking, resetting. And that's where Gulb comes in. Gulb isn't just chaos. He's entropy, not evil, not malicious, but inevitable. The force that resets the board when it becomes too crowded. He appears in ancient myths, in forbidden texts, in whispered bedtime stories. He devours knowledge, identity, structure. He is the hand that wipes the chalkboard clean. And yet, even Gulb doesn't end things forever. From the destruction he brings, something always begins again, like moss growing from ash, like Finn from flame. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that maybe Finn wasn't the first Finn. Maybe the Lich wasn't the first Lich. Maybe even the Ice King wasn't the first cursed soul to wear the crown and forget his name. It means that Ooo has no true origin story, because it never needed one. It just always was. A realm caught between memory and myth, constantly rewritten by the players inside and the forces watching outside. A game where kindness rewrites the rules, and love leaves echoes even the stars remember. Now let's drift even further into the spiral. You remember the cosmic owl, don't you? That solemn guardian of prophetic dreams. The one who appears only in visions that truly matter. When we see him, time always seems to slow. The tone shifts. The dream turns lucid. And reality, as we know it, feels negotiable. But what is the cosmic owl, really? A messenger? A warden? A player in the game? Or the audience? He doesn't interfere. He doesn't speak much. He watches from his impossible perch inside dreams, where he sees every thread before it's pulled. It's as though he's memorized the script, nodding quietly each time a line is repeated. And when a dream is altered, when the vision doesn't follow the expected path, he notices. That tells us something chilling. There is a script. At least there was. Until someone began changing it. Let's look at Prismo again, one of the most beloved cosmic beings in the Adventure Time multiverse. He's Wishmaster, but not a genie. He's soft-spoken, thoughtful, lonely even. He knows things that no mortal could know. He refers to events across timelines like reruns of a favorite show. And when someone like Jake interacts with him, something amazing happens. Prismo bends. He jokes. He softens. He chooses friendship, even when the rules say not to. In that moment, the loop glitches. Jake, so casual, so sleepy, throws off the balance of a multiversal cycle just by being himself. And what follows? Prismo is reborn. Finn begins to transcend his own limits, and the idea of destiny begins to loosen its grip. It's subtle, but it's there. The wheel turns, but the spoke wobbles. The game resets, but one of the pawns remembers. Here's a question to tuck under your pillow tonight. What if the characters we love, Finn, Jake, BMO, Marceline, are not just travelers through time, but rebels against it? Not by fighting cosmic forces head-on, but by feeling deeply in a universe that wants them to forget. What if their real victory isn't defeating evil, but remembering love in a world built on amnesia? This brings us to the vault. Finn's mind, fractured by trauma, hides a memory of his past life, a life in which he was Shoko, a girl who lived long ago in the early days of Princess Bubblegum's rule. Shoko dies. Her life ends. But a version of her, an echo, remains in Finn. That one episode changes everything, because it proves undeniably that souls persist. That identity carries across incarnations. And that time in Ooo doesn't just move forward. It loops, sometimes literally, sometimes spiritually, but always with purpose. What if every hero in Ooo is just a reincarnation of someone who's been here before? Not identical, not a clone, but a player returning to the board in a new form, trying to make slightly better moves this time around, trying to fix what they couldn't last time. Trying to remember what the universe always tries to help them forget. And so, maybe, the Land of Ooo is less like a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and more like a dream we're all dreaming together. A realm of shifting timelines, silent watchers, and repeated roles. A realm where the lines between fate and freedom blur, where a child's laughter can shake the stars, where a game console can carry the weight of history, where even the end isn't really the end, another chance to begin again. Let's go back, farther than Shoko, farther than Simon, even farther than the Mushroom War. Let's revisit Evergreen, a crusty old ice elemental from the ancient world, well before humanity, before Ooo, before the rules we know were written. He was obsessed with creating a magical crown to protect the world from a fiery comet. The problem? His assistant Gunther, just a lumpy green dinosaur with a loyal heart, ends up wearing it instead. And that accident might have echoed forever, because when Gunther puts on the crown, he doesn't just go mad. He becomes something new. He mutters a name. Gunther. That name would become immortal. Every Ice King, every timeline, every variation. No, always had Gunther. But why? Could this be the universe's way of repeating a mistake? Or is it trying to complete something it never finished? You see, the crown isn't just a magical item, it's a cosmic blueprint. It carries memories, echoes, remnants of Evergreen's intentions. And when Simon wears it, the cycle tightens. The crown remembers both Evergreen's desperation and Gunther's servitude, and pushes Simon to repeat both. And Simon, like so many others in Ooo, is caught in a loop he didn't create, but keeps replaying. Because the magic of Ooo doesn't forget. Then there's Galb, the incomprehensible being who seems to erase form, meaning, and even being itself. Galb isn't evil in the traditional sense. He doesn't monologue. He doesn't want revenge. He just undoes. Like a universal eraser. And yet, he too follows patterns. He appears in stories where things must be reset. He's summoned not by chaos, but by pain. Betty Groff, in her desperate love for Simon, unleashes Golb in an attempt to save the man she once loved, and in doing so, she becomes something else entirely, merged with Golb, trapped in the undoing. But here's the twist. That act of love bends a loop. Golb is interrupted. Simon is freed. Not through war, not through cleverness, but through a sacrifice driven by love. And in that moment, we see it again. What we've been tracing through all of Ooo's strange and sleepy corners. The loop can be changed, not destroyed, not broken entirely, but altered, like a song with a new verse, like a dream that shifts just before you wake. Now think of Finn and Jake's final journey and together again. It's the afterlife. But it's also not. Jake has moved on. He's transcended the cycle in his own chill, loving way. Finn, still restless, seeks him out. And when they reunite, they don't just rest. They choose to be reborn. Together. That's huge. Because it shows us something extraordinary. The loop is a choice. Yes, the universe cycles. Yes, the patterns are strong. But love can reroute the game. Consciousness, even in its simplest form, like a dog's loyalty or a boy's curiosity, can shift the story. Jake's willingness to leave peace behind to help Finn. Finn's decision to jump back into life with his brother. Despite everything, it proves that the players are not just pieces. They're writers, too. They may not control the board, but they can rewrite the next move. And the forces beyond, Prismo, the Cosmic Owl, even Golb, seem to respect that. They observe. They adapt. And they allow these tiny, beautiful acts of rebellion to ripple outward like dreamlight. So here we are. All of Ooo, from Shoko to Simon, from Bubblegum to BMO, might be just echoes on a wheel. But with each pass, the echo deepens. Finn becomes more than a hero. Jake becomes more than a companion. PB becomes more than a ruler. The Ice King becomes human again. That's the magic. It's not that the cycle ends. It's that with enough heart, enough growth, and enough kindness, the cycle becomes a spiral, still repeating, but ascending. And now, we come full circle. Back to the question we started with. Is the Land of Ooo caught in a cycle that repeats forever? But if so, it's not just a cycle of war and loss. It's a cycle of learning, of evolving, of trying again. You see, every loop we've explored tonight isn't just about repeating the past. It's about transforming it, giving the next version a better chance than the one before. Simon becomes more than Evergreen's shadow. Finn becomes more than a sword. Marceline becomes more than her trauma. Jake becomes peace itself. Even Golb, the ultimate void, can be touched by love. And maybe that's the most powerful idea in all of Adventure Time, that cycles are not prisons. They're opportunities to notice, to reflect, to soften. And maybe, just maybe, to remember. Because there are whispers throughout Ooo, quiet moments that barely register if you're not listening closely. Like when BMO sings to themselves. Like when the Ice King forgets his pain for a fleeting second. Like when Marceline plays a tune she doesn't know she remembers. Each moment, like a note in a forgotten lullaby. And the more we listen, the more we recognize that this isn't just a world of adventure. It's a world of memory, of emotional echoes, of souls weaving in and out of time, nudging the wheel toward something brighter. So what does that mean for us? We're just watching a cartoon, right? Maybe. But stories like Adventure Time aren't just stories. They're maps. They show us how even the most broken parts of the world can lead to something beautiful. They remind us that we're all part of something bigger, something ancient and mysterious and quietly kind. That maybe the struggles we face, the emotions we carry, the lessons we learn, are our own versions of the same cosmic game. And maybe, like Finn, like Jake, like BMO, and Betty and Bubblegum, we're here to remember that. Pain can become growth, chaos can become music, and even endings can become beginnings. So as you close your eyes tonight, drift softly into the stars of Ooo. Imagine yourself as one of its players wandering through forests of candy and snow, across deserts of crystal, through skies lit by comet light and dream birds. Feel the wheel beneath you. Not heavy, but steady. Spinning not to trap you, but to carry you forward. To give you another turn, another lesson, another story. And maybe, when the time comes, another chance to love. Hey there, sleepyhead. You've made it all the way. Let this video rest in your mind like a gentle bedtime story whispered through time. If you're still awake, leave a moon emoji in the comments to let me know you made it to the end. And if you're already asleep, well, that's exactly what this was for. Until next time, may your dreams be full of soft adventures, kind ghosts, and the sweetest loops of all. Good night.